will proceed as agreed. Well, obviously, there will have to be support to the University of Ghana financially, but it is the terms and conditions under which those have been made. And as you know, there is an audit. The first phase of the audit was released. The second phase, now we're waiting for the third phase that will be finished, I believe, at the end of September, which will give greater clarity to a number of issues. And the university is also doing a number of other assessments, human resources, technical capacity, that will, I think, help in moving the university forward. The government's role will be to try to assist with clearing off some of the debts that seem to have been accumulated, but under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome to this week's post-cabinet press briefing. Dr. Luncheon is unable to join us today due to unforeseen circumstances. However, because of the importance of government communicating to the public on post-cabinet matters, Madam Gail Tashira, Presidential Advisor on Governance, is with us today to bring us those highlights from the last cabinet meeting, which was held on Tuesday, 17th of September 2013. After her opening statement, Madam Tashira will entertain questions first on the opening statement and, should time permit, on other matters of importance. Madam Tashira.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Christine. We will start with the cabinet met on Tuesday, had a long meeting, and dealt with a number of important issues which we thought we should bring to your attention. The first, as normal with Dr. Luncheon, he reports on the number of contracts that have been issued, and some of them may be of particular interest to you. In the area of security, the areas of the supply and installation of electrical systems at the new forensic laboratory under the Citizen Security program, and that is the value of $27,239,850, and procurement of uniforms for the Ghana Police Force, $124,926,570, which is this latter contract is an annual feature. The local government, there were two contracts in relation to, one, the provision of security services throughout the coastland for regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 at $1,639,066,080. And the construction of Itabali Primary School in Region 7, $19,021,754. Agriculture's Agriculture Export Diversification Program, they went to tender for consultancy services to support components of this program, and the contract was awarded for $350,000 US. In relation to human services, there were three contracts in terms of a number of the institutional residences. For example, procurement of dietary items for the Mahaika Children's Home, $21,822,940. Procurement of dietary items for the Sophia Care Center, $31,525,860. And procurement of dietary items for the PALMS, the Geriatric Institution, of $49,748,040. In the health sector, there was a contract to do with training of primary healthcare workers for the baby-friendly hospital initiatives in regions 2, 4, 6, and 10. And of course, under finance, the supply of cabling and switching network for the CLICO building of $15,301,919. One of the initiatives taken by Ministry of Amerindian Affairs was discussed at Cabinet in relation to the launching of the Arawak Language Revival Pilot Project in the Amerindian village of Kopui in Region 2, and I think some of you know that's in the lake area. This pilot project was launched on Monday, September 16, 2013, and the pilot would see children ages 4 to 10 years being exposed to a 10-month course in basic Arawak or starters Arawak. The project is also being supported by the Amerindian Research Unit, University of Guyana. The experience in this pilot village will lay the foundation for the expansion of the project into a national initiative. Cabinet reaffirmed its desire and intention to continue to promote and preserve cultural diversity and the indigenous languages as a main focus of the PPP civic administration. Cabinet also was brought up to date by the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Anil Nandalal, about the more recent developments subsequent to his presentation to CFATF of the Guyana August 26 report. The Attorney General disclosed that CFATF had deemed the Guyana report he had submitted as incomplete. That incomplete designation was due to the Guyana's inability to provide CFATF with a definitive date on which the amended Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Bill will be enacted by the 10th Parliament of Guyana. Despite being apprised of the current situation regarding the Parliamentary Special Select Committee on the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financing Terrorism Amendment Bill, the CFATF still insisted on a definitive date of enactment by the time they meet again in November. The recent past behavior of the opposition in Parliament in general and specifically with regards to the anti-money laundering legislation does not augur well for the future. In the meantime, while CFATF noted favorably the non-legislative interventions by the administration and urged further progress, so that although we were given an incomplete status in relation to the recommendations relating to legislative instruments, that they noted with some satisfaction that Guyana was making progress in the non-legislative interventions, which are about 20% of the recommendations under the CFATF. Just to give you some three small highlights from Cabinet, but nevertheless significant. And the final report, the Guyana Civil Aviation report of the accident which occurred on July 30th, 2011 at the CGIA airport has been completed. This is the Caribbean Airways accident, Flight 523 final report. The report concluded the following. Quote, the cause of the accident was the aircraft touching down far beyond the touchdown zone due to the captain maintaining excess power during the flare and not using the airplane's full deceleration capacity, resulting in the aircraft overrunning the pavement and fracturing the fuselage. Therefore, the CGIA earlier contention about pilot error was supported by the findings of the report. For your information, a number of organizations participated in the investigation compilation of the report by the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority. These are the National Transportation Safety Board of the United States of America, the Caribbean Aviation Safety and Security Oversight, CASOS, Caribbean Airlines itself, Trinidad and Tobago Civil Aviation Authority, and Boeing Aircraft Company. And so the Cabinet noted the contents of the report and expresses appreciation to the Civil Aviation Authority of Guyana, the National Transportation Safety Board of the United States, for their expertise that was lent to Guyana, and a number of other individuals, attorneys at law, etc., who helped in the compilation of the report. The report will therefore be made public. The second issue under Cabinet items, the National Two Showers Council meeting, the Minister of Amerindian Affairs, Mrs. Pauline Sukai, tabled a Cabinet memo updating Cabinet on the planned October 21st to 25th, 2013 meeting of the National Two Showers Council. The usual participants will include the Two Showers of Amerindian Villages, senior councillors, Community Council Two Showers, and community leaders from all 10 administrative regions. The venue remains the Guyana International Conference Center, GICC, in Liliendal. The agenda will include the report of the executive, that is the executive of the National Two-Shows Council, and its discussion and update on ongoing matters, including the community development projects and the Amerindian land titling projects, presidential grants, and the opt-in mechanism for Amerindian villages and communities with regards to the LCDS. The Cabinet will also use the opportunity within the conference agenda to have an opportunity for the President and Cabinet Ministers to interact with Two-Shows and to hear their concerns in relation to their villages. The funding for the Two-Shows meeting was approved by Cabinet. The third issue of note is the visit of the Barbados Foreign Minister. Senator Maxine McLean, the Foreign Minister of Barbados, will pay an official visit to Guyana from October 4th to the 6th, 2013. During her visit, the second meeting of the Guyana-Barbados Joint Commission, Economic, Technical and Cultural Commission would be held. The sectors under consideration will include agriculture, education, tourism and hospitality, air and sea transport, immigration, security and legal services, investment, and exports. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Caroline Rodriguez-Burkett, will lead the Guyana team and the sectoral ministers and the technical people involved. And the Barbadian Minister of Foreign Affairs will also, her team will also include private sector representatives from Barbados. One of the items we'd like to bring up to date to the media today is the on-site visit of the Organization of American States, MESASIC, which is the mechanism for the implementation of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, which Guyana signed in 2001 and was ratified, and Guyana has a lead expert on the MESASIC, which is the lead experts for the 31 countries that have ratified the convention in the member states of the Organization of American States. Not all countries, by the way, have signed and ratified it, but 31 countries have, and when they ratify it, they have the opportunity to name a lead expert. I have been the lead expert for Guyana on the MESASIC from 2008, and Guyana has been reviewed in the first review in 2006. 2008 was the second review, the third review was 2011, and now all the countries are in the fourth cycle review of the implementation of the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption. In 2011, September, when we completed the review of all the countries in the third round review, the committee decided that the fourth round would include on-site visits to countries, and it would follow up on the first round review in the 2006 period of the recommendations were made by the expert committee to the countries in that period. So far, 15 countries have been reviewed of the 31, and Guyana is in the fourth group, which will be reviewed in March next year. We're in the grouping with Canada, Grenada, Jamaica, for example. In the review, they will look at the recommendations that were made to the first round review, which has to do with conflict of interest, hiring practices, declaration of assets and incomes, rules of hiring, disciplining, promoting, and looking at the oversight bodies within each of the countries. So that Guyana had to respond in June, and the report is tabled on the OAS website. It is a public document, and you can all look at it and see whether you, as journalists, think that Guyana has adequately responded or not. And that for the first time, the Transparency Institute of Guyana, which is now an affiliate of the Transparency International, was invited to put their responses on the questionnaire which Guyana had to answer, and so their document is also on the website. The on-site visit, the team that will be coming will be the OAS Technical Secretariat and translators, as well as 3 experts from Haiti and 1 from Trinidad. In each, for the review each country, lots are pulled at the beginning of each review cycle to determine which countries will review another country. And so Haiti and Trinidad pull lots to review Guyana. So they're called a subgroup. The agenda, the experts will be arriving between October 6th and 7th, and the review will take place on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. The morning of October 8th is exclusively reserved in the agenda for civil society organizations, and we have invited 12 civil society organizations to be part of that. These are umbrella organizations that represent labor, business, for example, the legal profession, and of course Transparency Institute of Guyana, as well as other organizations. 4 have so far accepted and named their representatives. The other 8 are we are following up with them to make sure that the civil society session has a broad representation of civil society organizations who will discuss the issues of conflict of interest, systems for registering income, assets, and liabilities, access to public information, and mechanisms to encourage participation of civil society in efforts to prevent corruption. The oversight bodies, after that, will be then included in the agenda with set times, scheduled times. The organizations that have, the oversight bodies that have been named by the OAS to come before them is the Audit Office of Guyana, the Public Service Commission, the National Procurement Tender Administration, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Judicial Service Commission, the Integrity Commission, and the Commissioner of Information. Thus far, of the 7 agencies, 5 have agreed and named their representatives to the scheduled times they've been given. At the end of the on-site visit, there will be a report prepared, and then for the next few months, the subgroup will review that document. Guyana, as the subject ministry or the country under review, will have an opportunity to make corrections or clarifications, and then in March we go before the 30 members to be reviewed by all in a plenary. And so that is how the mechanism works. And so I thought I would bring that to your attention because the OAS did put out a bulletin advising that there was this on-site visit, and I understand that a number of media personnel made comments, and I understand some of the Facebooks or websites have been rather active in relation to making deductions on what this visit will accomplish. I also was, when I was asked to stand in for Dr. Roger Luncheon, I was going to bring this matter of the on-site visit to the attention of the media. Cabinet has been apprised and Cabinet's aware and fully briefed on this matter, but I had greater impetus to ensure that it was on the report I presented you today because I noticed the new Canadian High Commissioner's comments in Kayacho News today, and I felt it was important that the media have an understanding of how the treaty obligations under the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption operate. And as you know, we are a signature and we have ratified the UN Convention Against Corruption, which is a newer convention that was brought about in 2007. And we will also be in the first cycle review, as all the countries of the world are in the first cycle review in this period. And so we will be reviewed in 2014 by the UN Convention Against Corruption. And they have similar mechanisms as the MESISIC, but obviously with a UN bent on how they manage their treaty reporting. We will be having a workshop under the UN Convention Against Corruption on October 23rd to 25th to assist us in preparing and drafting and informing the agencies that have to respond to the areas on the UN Convention, and this will be done by the UN Regional Advisor on the Convention Against Corruption, who is now based in Panama. So there are issues to do with our treaty reporting. As I said, I was very taken aback by the comments made by the Canadian High Commissioner, who is a brand new person to Guyana. And while she is free to her opinion, and the opinion I assume of her government, I feel that the way in which it is presented is an unfortunate one in terms of Guyana-Canada relations. I sit in the Messisque as an expert with the Canadian, American, and other experts, and I am very au fait as a member of that committee from 2008 and what are the inadequacies of other countries, including Canada, in relation to the implementation and upholding of the obligations under the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption. But I do not wish to go into a diatribe on that, except to say that I think the comments, some of the deductions that the High Commissioner made, I'm assuming that she made because it's in the press, and therefore I could be castigated for assuming that Canada News has correctly reported on the High Commissioner. And so if they haven't, then you will have to answer for what I say. And that is that it's an unfortunate unfortunate comments being made for a person who has just arrived and I don't believe has completed the rounds, the courtesy rounds to various government officials and other departments. The role of Canada with the Transparency Institute of Guyana is the business of Canada and their use of their funds to support organizations. The last issue I want to report on, because I'm sure you have issues you would like to ask me about, the last issue I'd just like to report to you on, which is the Government of Guyana Region 10 meetings. As you know, the last meeting was in July the 10th, and for a number of reasons, the meetings, one meeting had to be postponed, or cancelled actually, because of the fire that took place at Office of the President. The meeting with Region 10 was to be held that date. As you know, there was a fire at climate change. And so we met yesterday. The meeting was a very long meeting from 5 o'clock, 5:30, right through to just before 9 o'clock. And the representatives on the government side, the Prime Minister, Samuel Hines, Dr. Roger Luncheon, Minister Robeson Ben, Mr. Odinga Lumumba, and yours truly. And on the side of Region 10, Mr. Solomon, Mr. Sharma Solomon, Ms. Vanessa Kisoon, MP, Mr. Aubrey Norton, consultant to Region 10, and two RDC councillors, Mr. Leslie Gonzalez and Mr. Butters. The meeting went through a number of items that were extraneous to the Region 10 agreement, but matters that Region 10 felt should be included on the agenda, and a mechanism was discussed on how some of these matters would be dealt with between Region 10 and the Government of Guyana. We also discussed matters relating to the agreement itself and what were outstanding matters, and we were unable to reach agreement as yet on the chairperson of the technical committee. On a number of other issues, there was movement in terms of how we were addressing areas of the TV licensing, the lens issues, and drainage issues. We agreed to meet in the first Friday in October. I think that is October the 3rd, I think it is, but it's the first Friday in October. So we've agreed to meet then. So just to let you know that the meeting was held and that we continue to talk and to try to find accommodation between the two bodies and to be able to resolve issues and differences of views. I would now like to end my presentation and to call on Christine to take back the floor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Tishera. The floor is now open for questions. First, on on the opening statement and then on any others here.
We have covered all the quarters. That's interesting. Yes.
As the chief whip on the government side,
Yeah.
when it comes out to this in October,
Yes.
are you optimistic then that the sept legislation can be passed before November?
I am always cautiously optimistic, although the operative area is cautious. I am always hopeful that the other side will see the righteousness of proceeding on this matter. But we will have to, as they say, the old people say, test the pudding. You know, taste it to see what you would like, or test the waters, so that when recess comes to an end, as the chairperson of the committee, I will be convening a meeting as quickly as possible so that we can get back to the business of looking at the draft report, the amendments that the committee did work with, to see if we can reach agreement in the committee. So I continue and to be cautiously optimistic.
Charmaine, thanks for
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
back to the issue of corruption.
Yes.
How does government feel, or what is government view rather, on the mounting of a billboard by Transparency International in the vicinity of the Demerara Harbor Bridge, more or less calling on the public to help stop corruption?
I personally have no problem with that. I think that all the efforts to get people to feel comfortable to, one, not be involved in bribing themselves, because it takes two people to bribe, if you're talking about bribing, as one of the acts of corruption, and therefore to encourage people to desist if they are involved with it, but also to feel that it becomes more an issue that they feel confident to report it. The I Paid a Bribe website is an interesting website that gives you an idea of people coming forward to say whether they did, or they were asked and they didn't, or whether they were asked and they did. I think these are useful tools to improve and enhance citizen participation in the fight against corruption. And there's no country in the world that does not have corruption. And so it is an important mechanism to have people have an opportunity or avenues where they can make reports, and they can be investigated, and if they're found to be true, they can lead to charges being brought. And so I think that these are useful tools. I think that, though, just having a billboard by itself is not sufficient, but it is part of what you call awareness, and that can suffice. But the mechanisms for reporting corruption, there are mechanisms available, and people should be encouraged to use that. One of the pieces of legislation that we have to look at is what's called whistleblower legislation, which is one of the areas the OES has looked at with a number of countries, and there was a request by the countries in the OES for assistance from the OES technical and legal departments to help us in crafting the drafting guidelines for a whistleblower legislation. That has finally been done this year after many, many workshops with lawyers and draftsmen, etc., and countries. And so there is now a draft guideline on the areas that would cover whistleblower legislation. Whistleblower legislation, as you know, is meant to create a more enabling environment for people to make reports, whether they are within the entity where there is corruption, or if they're an external to the entity. And so the whistleblower provides some protection to make sure that they are not harassed, or in some countries their lives can be threatened, and so, or they can be killed. And so this is a piece of legislation that we have approached the Attorney General's office to assist us with now taking those draft guidelines and converting them into a piece of legislation for Cabinet to examine. So that will be an important component that has to be brought forward. The other mechanisms, obviously, the Auditor General's Office and the Public Accounts Committee are important mechanisms that don't exist in all countries that are being reviewed by the OAS, for example. And so Guyana, in a number of its architecture, constitutional and legislative and administrative, in fact, is ahead of a number of countries. I encourage you to go on the MESASEEK website and to look up the reports on other countries and Guyana's reports. All are there, posted, that will help you to become familiar with this area. It's not now the OSV visit. We signed on to a convention, and a convention has obligations and treaty reporting. We signed on in 2001, and the mechanism for review was only designed in 2004. Guyana made its first report in 2006, and we're up to date in all our reports, including the current one. There are countries in the MESASEEK, some of them are not up to date, their reports have not been done, and so it is, when you use the word now before OAS, it's not now. This is a matter we've been before the OAS, and all the countries have been. And all countries treat the conventions, both the Inter-American and the UN, as progress reports, and that countries are all struggling to try to reduce and end corruption in their countries. There is not one country in the OAS mechanism and the UN mechanism that are labeled and put on different levels in relation to corruption. The Transparency International indicators are ones that we have publicly, including at workshops with the TIGI, and in front of the Transparency International representative, questioned, how is it that countries in the region that have not ratified the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption are given a higher ranking than Guyana? And these are things that even in the OAS is thought that the indicators are problematical with the Transparency International. This is their global report. When the Transparency International comes before the expert committee, when a country is being reviewed, they put forward what are facts in relation to the systems, processes, laws, weaknesses, and deficiencies. They do not raise any particular allegation specifically of corruption. That is not the forum for it. And so we're all, as countries, there are countries that haven't implemented areas of the convention. And so, for example, to give you one, I don't want to name the countries. In the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, there is a whole area, a clause that deals with bribery of foreign officials and foreign investors and stuff like that. One of the recommendations, one of the parts of the convention is that your tax, your income tax and your tax deductions should not in any way allow for illegal and unlawful deductions vis-a-vis the convention. What it means is that companies cannot claim for what is called facilitation payments. This is the nice word that is in law in these countries, called facilitation payments. And there are two major countries that are held up in this region as the paradigms of virtue in terms of corruption, whose actual legislation allows for facilitation payments. So the companies can come to our country, they can take people out to dinner, they can send the spouse of someone on a shopping trip in Miami, they can buy expensive gifts, and then go back to their countries and make income tax claims under the facilitation payments. This is, in the view of the OAS, this is in contradiction to the convention. But even when that happens, the state is advised to take action to have their parliaments rectify the situation and to remove that piece of legislation. But in the OAS, as with the UN, the sovereign right of nations is upheld. And so in those circumstances where the example I'm giving you is that those countries usually respond, they will try, but that the parliaments of their countries are not in favor of removing these clauses from their legislation. Just as so too we go before CFATF with the amendments to the anti-money laundering bill to bring us in compliance with the Financial Action Task Force, and to be able to bring ourselves into line with what is international banking and financial transactions. But we can't move because the Parliament and the opposition have stymied this whole approach. So there is a somewhat comparative example here. Guyana, like other countries, will continue to strive to improve what it's doing, and in certain areas we have done reasonably well. In other areas we still have work to do in terms of strengthening capacity to investigate, capacity to bring strong, good cases to the court that can't be unraveled on technicalities by the lawyers of the accused, the timeliness of judicial decisions, the timeliness of investigations. These are all issues that can impact on one's success rate, for example. Yes.
Not on the presentation.
Yes.
Quite recently, there were talks with Brazil about some projects, including the Wisdom 10 highway. I was wondering what was our position on that.
I would be unable to report on that, truthfully. I've been away for 2 weeks at Commonwealth Parliamentary Association meeting and the OAS. I'm not up to speed with that, but I'm sure the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Public Works would be au fait with all that, except to know that our relations with Guyana, Brazil, that we look to Brazil in terms of being a trade partner and investments and so forth, as a general principle and policy of the government. Yes. The local government bills have not reached the President as yet, and the Constitution has not been violated. The Constitution says that when the President receives the bills, any bills, and he does not wish to assent, he returns it within 21 days of receipt of the bills to the Parliament with a letter explaining his reasons. And as you know, this was done in relation to 2 bills from the opposition. The local, in the case of a bill coming before the President, which he may wish to assent to, in the Constitution he has up to 70 days. The President has not received the bills as yet. Yes.
When Dr. Luncheon is expected back on duty?
I'm not aware that Dr. Luncheon is not on duty. Dr. Luncheon is on duty 24/7. He's just not physically here with us today. That's all. He's okay. He's okay. He's a champion, you know that. I would not comment on that. I would not comment on that. I mean, I would hope, Dennis, that you wouldn't, I'm not saying this is what the case is, but I hope that if my dear Dr. Luncheon wanted to have a few days rest and relaxation or go on holiday, you wouldn't want to put that down to health issues. It would be well-deserved R&R for such a hard-working champion of the PPPC government.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Because he doesn't usually take leave, huh? Yes. No, he's indisposed today, and I assure you he will be in your midst at the next press briefing. Any other issues?
One other thing,
Yes.
Chair, relates to the University of Ghana.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.